Hi, this is Olivier Mossen speaking. Welcome to this video tutorial on learning how to use Kmath. Kmath is an analog modeling virtual synthesizer, and its specificity is that in Kmath, settings are made with mathematics. So here we are going to explain all this in details so that at the end of this video you will know all the features of this powerful synthesizer. So let's go. How does it work? We have to define a waveform here, and we can possibly make it pass through a filter that we set here. For now, the waveform is set to 0, so when we play keyboard we don't hear anything. If we set waveform to 1, then when we play we hear little percussions, because the signal goes fast from 0 to 1. We will hear it better if we type 10. Otherwise we hear nothing, because a single number like 10 is not an audio signal. So what we have to put here is an audio signal. And we are going to find audio signals in the list of symbols, which appears when we click here. So here is the list of symbols, or if you prefer, the list of modules, because Kmath is a modular synthesizer. We'll be able to use all these modules in the fields of the synth. We have these 3 fields here and there and there. Also, other fields will appear later there. So we see that we can do sums, subtractions, multiplications, quotients, exponentiations. We can use parentheses. Then we have the symbol noise, which is the first example of audio signal. So from now we can set our waveform to noise. And now when we play we hear some noise. We can set the level of our waveform by multiplying it by a number. For example 0.5, we'll hear it twice less loud. Now we want to make some music, so we need oscillators. In Kmath, oscillators are symbols VCO1, VCO2 until VCO9, what means that we can use up to 9 different oscillators. Let's try to put just VCO1 in our waveform. That doesn't work and we see a red error message, because in Kmath, VCOs don't take real values. They take values in the circle S1. S1, which is the name of the circle in mathematics. So VCOs are values which turn into the circle S1 with some frequency. And in order to get real numbers from VCOs, we need a real numbers valued function defined on the circle S1. Fortunately, we have such functions here, which are the wave motifs. For example, the symbol wave1. And this is indeed a function from S1 to real numbers. And with these wave motifs we'll define the shape of our signal. Triangular signal or rectangular signal or else. Concretely, we type the wave motif wave1 applied to the oscillator VCO1. Wave1 appears here. For now it is set to 0, so when we play we hear nothing, but then we draw the wave motif with the mouse and we begin to hear something. You can add plenty of vertices, then you can move them and you can clear them with right click. I switch to monophonic mode. I can adjust the portamento. I draw a triangular signal. Now this is a sawtooth signal. Now a rectangular signal. I can try to draw a sine wave, so I draw a sinusoid. I do what I can, but my sinusoid will never be perfect. But it doesn't matter because in our list of symbols we already have the sine wave. This is a symbol sine, and we haven't to draw it. So I just have to replace wave 1 by sine. Now we hear the sine wave sound. It is the simplest sound, with no harmonic. Now let me just tell that we can multiply VCOs, but only with whole numbers. If I multiply by 2, my oscillator gets twice faster. By 3, thrice faster. By 5, 5 times faster. Now let's come back to a rectangular signal. I can adjust the level by multiplying by a number. For example 2, it will be twice as loud. By 10 it is too loud, so I decrease the volume. Then I can multiply by billions of billions, but of course it saturates. So let's type a reasonable number, 0.5. I go up the volume. I can add a second term in my waveform, the wave motif wave 2 applied to oscillator VCO2. Wave 2 appears here and I draw it. I'll draw a sawtooth signal. Now we have the sums of these two terms, so we hear the mix of these two signals. I decrease the level of the sawtooth signal by multiplying it by 0.4. But the better way to adjust the levels of these two signals is to use faders. And in Kmath, faders are these symbols. x1 for example, and it is a number which varies between 0 and 1 that we vary with the mouse. So I multiply my first term by x1 for example, and my second term by x2. So the faders appear there, and I can vary them with the mouse. This is the rectangular signal and the sawtooth signal. Even better, I can use just one fader to balance between my two signals by replacing x2 by the term 1 minus x1, which also vary between 0 and 1 but in reverse. Rectangular, sawtooth, rectangular. Now we can turn on the filter. We can choose between two low-pass filters, one band-pass filter and one high-pass filter. I'll choose this low-pass filter. When we turn it on, we no longer hear anything, because the cutoff frequency is set to 0, so nothing passes with a low-pass filter. I increase the cutoff frequency to 2000 Hz. So now we hear the lowest frequencies. The resonance can vary between 0 and 1. I set it to 0.5. I increase again the cutoff frequency, the resonance, the cutoff frequency. I can also use a fader to set the cutoff frequency between 0 and 6000 Hz. Now let's go back to our waveform. Note that we use two different oscillators, VCO1 and VCO2. We can modify the frequencies of these oscillators. Here it is. By default, the frequency of a VCO is f times this stuff, but for now this stuff is useless, so I erase it. Here too. So the frequency of a VCO is f. What is f? It is the frequency of the note you play. For example, if you play A440, f will be equal to 440. The proof of that is that if we replace f by 440, nothing changes. But if we leave it like that and we play other notes, we still hear a A440. so it's bad, so let's put back F. Now, if I multiply F by 1 plus a little something, 1.01, then we slightly detune this oscillator, so it might be interesting. If I multiply F by 2, the oscillator transposes by 1 octave higher. If I multiply by 2 times 2 equals 4, it transposes by 2 octaves. By 8, 3 octaves. And note that 8 is equal to 2 to the power of 3. Now if I multiply F by 2 to the power of minus 1, that is to say 1 over 2, then it transposes by 1 octave lower. If I multiply F by 2 to the power of 1 over 12, it transposes by 1 semitone, because there are 12 semitones in an octave. If I multiply F by 2 to the power of 7 over 12, it transposes by a fifth, because there are 7 semitones in a fifth. Now we can calculate this numerical expression with Google. It appears to be very close to 1.5, and it is not a coincidence. Indeed, it is a fundamental principle of the music. This fact that 2 to the power of 7 over 12 is almost equal to 1.5. Now I copy this value and paste it in Kmath. Nothing changed, but if I put exactly 1.5, something changed a little bit. Let's hear it again. Now if I multiply F by 2 to the power of 1 over 6, then it transposes by 1 tone higher, because there are 6 tones in an octave. I can calculate this numerical expression with Google. I copy and paste it in Kmath. Nothing changed. Now if I raise this number to the power of minus 1, that is to say I take the inverse, then it transposes by 1 tone lower. And now we can configure the pitch bend, because you know that pitch bend is often used to transpose oscillators by 1 tone lower or higher. And we justly have in our list of symbols PTB for pitch bend, which vary between minus 1 and 1 with the pitch bend, and which is equal to 0 when the pitch bend is at rest. So all we have to do is to raise this number to the power of PTB. And then with the pitch bend we transpose the oscillator by 1 tone lower or higher. And note that this expression is the frequency by default for VCOs. Now let's go back to our waveform. Let's clean a little bit. I remove faders. So our waveform is the sum of these two terms. So we hear the mix of these two signals. Now look what happens when I replace the plus by multiply. We are multiplying two audio signals. It is the principle of ring modulator, and it works very well. And it is also very interesting when you vary the frequency of one of the two signals. What we can do with the fader. This is the ring modulator. Note that faders can be automated in your host application. Now let's simplify our waveform and just keep one oscillator. We're going to control the level of our waveform with an envelope. In Kmath we draw the envelopes with the mouse. These are the symbols. ENV1 for example, and it is a number which varies between 0 and 1 during the note you play, and depending on what you have drawn with the mouse. Concretely, we multiply our waveform by ENV1. Our envelope appears here, and we draw it with the mouse. For example, we can slow down the attack. We can draw what we want. Now let's switch back to polyphonic mode. We can also control the level with the velocity. We use the symbol vel, which varies between 0 and 1 with the velocity. So we multiply our waveform by vel, and now we can play loud or soft. Next, we can use functions of one variable. This is the symbol G1, for example. There are many ways to use it. I will use it to create a velocity curve. For that, I apply G1 to vel here. G1 appears here, and I draw it with the mouse. Now I'm going to modulate the cutoff frequency of the filter with an LFO, a low frequency oscillator. In Kmath, you can create an LFO by using the symbol T, which is the time since the note has been played. You can use a wave motif applied to T, because a wave motif can be used like a periodic function with period 1. Concretely, we modify the cutoff frequency by adding a wave motif, wave 5, applied to T, times 1000 Hz, so that the LFO's amplitude is 1000 Hz. For now, the wave motif is set to 0, so there is no LFO, but now I draw it with the mouse and we hear a LFO of 1 Hz. If I want a LFO of 5 Hz, I just multiply T by 5. Next in our list we have MDW, which stands for the modulation wheel. It is a number which varies between 0 and 1 with the modulation wheel. I can use it to adjust the amplitude of my previous modulation by multiplying it by MDW. So now I adjust the modulation with the modulation wheel. Next in our list we have random numbers. For example, the symbol RDM1. It is a number between 0 and 1 chosen randomly for each note. I can use it, for example, to modulate the filter's resonance. Now we hear that the resonance is totally random. I can use a function G2 applied to RDM1 to control better the random events. So I draw with the mouse two different levels of resonance. This one with a big probability, and this one higher but with a small probability. Now we're going to do some frequency modulation. First we clean this, and this, and this. So frequency modulation means that we are going to modulate the frequency of oscillators here. We can do that with a fader. We have already done that before. Indeed, the fader X5 is still here. So with X5 we modulate the frequency of the oscillator. Or else we can use an envelope ENV2. The envelope appears here and I draw it with the mouse. Or else I can modulate with an LFO. I create an LFO with the wave motif wave 2, for example, applied to t times 5, so that we get a LFO of 5 Hz. And I draw it with the mouse. Note that this LFO of 5 Hz is an oscillator, so it can be made as well with a VCO. For example, VCO 8, for which we set the frequency to 5. Now we can modify this frequency, 10 for example, 20 Hz, 440 Hz. This is an audio frequency, we can also put F. Now it's interesting to hear what happens when you gradually move from low frequency to audio frequency. What we can do with the fader X9, low frequency, audio frequency. Now you hear that we can tune this fader to have a clean sound. But this fader is not precise enough to have a perfect tuning, so we'll use another fader X8 to make a fine tuning. So now with X9 I do a coarse adjustment, and then with X8 I do a fine tuning. Now the tuning is perfect and I don't want to touch these faders anymore, so I want to remove them. To do that I replace X9 by its value. Same with X8. Now I can calculate this numerical expression with Google. Nothing has changed, the tuning is still the same, but the problem is that the frequency of our sound is F times this number. That means that the tonality is weird, and if we want the normal tonality, we should put here F and only F. But if I put F here and if I want to keep my fine tuning, I have to remove this number here, but also there. That means that there I have to divide F by this number. And now my sound is in the normal tonality. Next in our list we have a key track symbol KTR. This is a number between 0 and 1 according to the pitch of the note you play. So it is close to 0 for low notes and close to 1 for high notes. Next we have the sine function. It is a function of one variable and it is equal to 0 for negative numbers and 1 for positive numbers. So using KTR and sine, we can split the keyboard in two, like this. we multiply the waveform by sine applied to KTR minus 0.5. So this expression will be equal to either 0 or 1. It will be 0 on the left half of the keyboard and 1 on the right half. So that now the sound is only on the right half of the keyboard. So we have seen that this expression allows to define a sound on the right half, and we should want to use it several times if we want to define an elaborate sound on the right half and another sound on the left half. So we're going to give a name to this expression, and with this name we'll be able to use it several times. The name is in our list, it has to be Y1 or Y2, etc. So I cut this expression in the clipboard and I replace it by Y1. Then I passed the expression into Y1 and then nothing has changed. Now to define a sound on the left half of the keyboard, I use the complementary expression 1 minus Y1. Now the sound is only on the left half. Then I define a sound on the right half with Y1. For example, a sine wave sound with an oscillator VCO3. For fun, I modulate the frequency of VCO3 with an LFO with 5 Hz. I factorize the envelope so that it proceeds on the two halves. At the end, you can save your work, you can change the name, you can change the location. There are 100 of programs. You can display the list. The 50 first programs are user programs where you can make your backups, and the 50 next programs are factory presets. This is the end. Thanks for watching. Do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. Bye bye.